Hey, welcome to Q&A, where you ask your questions on faith and life, and I do my best to give a biblical perspective. Well, let's jump into today's question. By way of context, it comes out of the current series that we're doing here at ALC, Doing Church God's Way, where we are working through the book of 1 Timothy, looking at Paul's advice to Timothy to address issues in the church so that it doesn't lose its focus on reflecting God and the kingdom and everything therein. And the question is this: enjoying the series Doing Church God's Way, but wonder where the line is between being relevant yet being different because of our faith and values. And I think it's a great question. I think it's a question we should continually ask ourselves, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of reducing relevance to a form of worship. To be relevant isn't necessarily to be modern and in terms of what we think in terms of contemporary church culture, music, lights, and all those things. Being relevant is not about the style of service. It's about the content. To be relevant is to engage the questions, the struggles of people, of life, to engage people where they're at in the midst of the brokenness of the world and the questions they have about meaning and purpose and identity, about hope, and to engage them with the gospel. And whatever style becomes secondary to that. And that's why, for example, we find many people today, or some celebrity people at any rate, who are turning to Christ and choosing to worship in conservative churches, traditional churches, in the Catholic Church, because the issue is not about style. Both are acceptable to God, whether it's a liturgical service that's been around for 1,500 years or whether it's a contemporary service. God loves them both. See, the issue is not what makes a church relevant is not the style, but the content, by the way it reflects God and the way it brings people into that place where they can begin to look beyond what is to what can be, to where they will find and discover that true meaning and true purpose and hope will never be found in the things of this world, but only in a relationship with God. You see, to be relevant is to engage people with that which the world can't. In fact, the questions people have arise because of the brokenness of the world. And so simply to reflect that, the culture of the world that's created that in our church is actually not the answer. It's not going to bring people any closer to God. It's not going to bring hope. It's not going to help people let go of what is and take hold of what can be. It's not going to help people move from circumstance to the certitude of the hope we have in Jesus Christ. And so the line for me is not about style, but about the way in which we do church. So for example, for me, we're a modern church. We're a contemporary church. We have the band on the stage, the lights, and all that sort of stuff. But we do it in such a way, or we strive to do it in such a way that where the focus is never the band. The focus is never in the physical setting that we have created, but that is merely a conduit to point people to beyond that to God. You see, in a concert, the focus is always on the band on stage. In worship, the focus must always be on the unseen God. And so when a church is structured and it uses its environment has been created to draw attention to what's happening up the front at the expense of what's happening around us, then I think we've lost something. We've crossed the line, because it's not about individuals gathered in the same room worshiping God. It's about the community coming together to give thanks, to encourage one another, to celebrate together, to mourn together, to encounter God together. And so we must be able to hear ourselves singing and worshiping together. We must be able to see so we can encourage each other with a smile. We're able to recognize we belong to one another. And so unlike a concert, I think a modern church, contemporary church, must utilize these the bands and all the atmospheres that create with lights and all that in ways that help foster that connection with God as a group, as as a community, not just as a bunch of individuals. And people mustn't be focused on the band, but that their gaze, so to speak, must be lifted up into the presence of God. Likewise, whether it be a contemporary church or a traditional church, I think the contents of preaching determines where the line is between being different and being relevant. You see, difference. You can be in a traditional church and you can still be relevant by preaching in ways that point people to Jesus, that help connect people with the hope that only He can give, that is focused on the kingdom of heaven rather than the things of this world. So often a lot of preaching falls into two categories in my experience. There is a lot of it is about God is like a therapist, and we get up on the couch and He's going to sort us out and help us, help us feel good about ourselves, and we can do this, we can get through this, or else it tends to be more political. But there's neither of those is really relevant. I think relevant preaching is around where we encounter God in the midst of what we're going through and recognize that no matter what we're going through, that God is with us. And because of who He is, that we can trust Him. And because of who He is, then we need to begin to let go of ourselves and put our hand in His. And through that, begin to be transformed and renewed through confession of sin, through sanctification, of becoming more like Jesus. It should never be about self-improvement and all those things. It should be about discovering identity and purpose in our relationship with God, not in the things of this world. Not about becoming a better person, but about becoming more like Jesus. Likewise, the way that we preach, I think, defines where the line is between being relevant and being different. I think that when we communicate in ways where people go away thinking, wow, what an incredible message, but what they really remember is the communicator rather than what was being communicated, then I think it's being different, but not in a good way. Being relevant is communicating powerfully, dynamically, engagingly in ways that people feel connected with God and go away thinking, wow, and they're talking more about God and who He is and what that means for them than it does about, wow, I can't wait to hear part 2. Can't wait to hear that guy again. So often many people spend more time online today chasing preachers than they do reading the Bible for themselves and praying. But conversely, and I've listened to sermons where, again, it's not relevant, it's different in a negative way because it's so boring that it's turning people off. It's not engaging people with the real needs of people, the real deep spiritual needs of people. It's not helping them connect with God, who loves them, who cares for them, and who wants to transform their lives through the power of the cross. So again, it's not style, it's of worship. It's about the content. So yeah, to be modern and be different is not to reflect the world, but to engage the world with hope, with truth, that reflects heaven, so that it helps people begin to set their sights on what really counts, and then to align their will with that. That they remember Jesus and not the preacher, not the band or anything like that. That we see lives increasingly changing rather than just people turning up for going through the same old, but never really growing, never really making differences in their life, never letting go of behavioral patterns that reflect this world rather than reflect the kingdom of heaven. And on it goes. So yeah, that's how I would see it. It's a great question. As I say, we don't have time to go in detail to it, but in broad brushstrokes, for me, that's the direction that I would go in and unpack. So, love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about that? Love to hear them. But hey, as always, if you've got questions on faith and life, feel free to jump over to slido.com. Use the hashtag AskHamish. Love to hear from you. But that's it for now. Until next time, God bless.